Ladies and gentlemen, welcome again on our channel. Romanians have voted for change. Romanians have voted for the red wave, not only in Pennsylvania, not only in Michigan, not only in Wisconsin, but also in Brașov, Bucharest, Constanța, Sfântu Gheorghe, and across the whole Romania. The second round of the presidential election between Călin Georgescu and Elena Lasconi is not only a matter of odds and chances, but also a matter of trust, courage, and our own foreign affairs, and not only foreign agents. Today, we're going to discuss the unfolding events in Romania. It's a revolution of the common sense proposed by Crin Antonescu some years ago. We're going to discuss with Adrian Tîrcă. Some of you already know him. He's the one who had the courage to ask President Iohannis, some very tough question in the previous presidential election, when all other journalists were licking his ass. You may remember this. And we're going to discuss with him. But for those of you who maybe for some reason don't know who Adrian Tîrcă is, let me just tell you a few words about him. He's a Dutch-Romanian citizen holding a Bachelor of Science cum laude in International Economics and Business from the University of Groningen in the Netherlands, and a Bachelor in Economics in International Economic Relations from the Academy of Economic Studies in Bucharest, Romania, with a thesis on the cultural factors enabling the success of foreign investments in China. He has a foundational understanding of Russian and Mandarin and is currently studying towards a degree in Spanish philosophy. Welcome, Adrian. I am very glad and honored that we have the chance to discuss today about this red revolution.
Thank you very much for having me. It is an honor, and it is actually the first time that I ever appear on a podcast, so I hope I'm going to do a good job.
Although you also, as you said previously, have a YouTube channel discussing, right, geopolitics from a European standpoint.
Yes, and it is called Europa Rediviva. The title is in Latin. It means just the revival of Europe, which we all hope for and pray for.
Adrian, who has right now the best odds of winning the presidential election between Mr. Calin Georgescu and Elena Valerica Lasconi?
Well, it's hard to say. I'm optimistic that Calin Georgescu will win because he's way better prepared than her for this position. He's a former diplomat. He spent time working for international organizations inside the European, the UN, and he's been a member of the Club of Rome and all these globalist, you would say, institutions. He has a PhD in soil science, and he's a professor at the university here in Romania. His background is very good for what you would expect from a president. I mean, he actually knows how institutions function, and he's also old enough to have developed his own political theory. So he's not just let's say, a competent bureaucrat, but also somebody who's been developing his own political movement for the past 10-15 years. I've known him since the protests against the Roșia Montană project and against the shale gas projects in 2010-2011, when that's when I heard of him as an ecologist. So he was against these protests just because they were destroying the soil and the groundwater, polluting the atmosphere and everything, and highly detrimental to the Romanian state as well, because the royalties involved were very low. So it was basically a scam for the Romanian state as well. Whereas the opponent, Elena Lasconi, she's a former TV presenter. She used to just present the news on television. and to just read the prompter essentially. So she was not making the news, she was just reading the news, And then she started appearing in commercials. She starred in all of these commercials regarding household products, including toilets. So yeah, this is kind of her background. And then she entered politics by joining this kind of reformist, so they say, quote unquote, political party in Romania. They say it's a liberal party, it's reformist. I have my doubts, but that's for another discussion. And because she had appeared previously on television, she managed to become the mayor of this small town in the mountains. It's quite a nice, picturesque place where people don't really go on holiday, but it's kind of well, you could do some sightseeing there, let's say. And from this position of small town mayor, she's now trying to get into Romania's highest political office. And she has never been in parliament, she's never been in the government, she has never been in some sort of governmental institution apart from being the mayor of this small town. So she has no idea about how stuff works. She has no idea about how institutions work. Her performance during the debates in the first round was abysmal. I mean, even her fans are ready to recognize the fact that she's not at all prepared to take office, and she barely knows what NATO is. She barely knows what the United Nations is. She had no idea who was in the Security Council of the UN. Completely oblivious to all these things, completely ignorant and unprepared for her job. However, since she made it into the second round, obviously there are some very strong forces that uphold her candidacy, that support her. And well, I mean, I think it should be an easy choice for Calin Georgescu to beat her, but then again, you don't really know with these forces and with all the hysteria that's been hyped up lately. I don't know.
But Adrian, did you expect for Călin Georgescu to reach the second round of this presidential election, or was it a very big surprise? And let me just tell you that Mr. Ciolacu, the centrist candidate, right, had 97% odds of reaching the second round, and he missed.
Yeah, it's quite shocking indeed. Very few people actually expected Calin Georgescu to make it into the second round. On Facebook, on social media in general, I am part of this sovereigntist bubble. Just like the people in my list were hoping for Trump to win, they were hoping for I don't know, for the referendum in the Republic of Moldova to fail or stuff like this. And not many people in my bubble actually supported Calin Georgescu. So most people voted for George Simeon, who is this candidate from this other kind of nationalist, sovereigntist party. But of course, his credentials are far lower than those of Calin Georgescu. I didn't really think much of Calin Georgescu just because he's been around. He's been around for at least 10 years, revolving around politics, not really getting involved. But he was never a party member. But he did revolve around these circles of power, of politics and stuff, and he did make it very clear that his intent is to actually become the leader of Romania one day. And just because so many years have passed since I've known him, and in these years he did not really seem to get any closer to what he was proposing, I thought that he's just a candidate without many chances, and that's why I voted. I encouraged my audience to vote for George Simeon, who stood a better chance. Also, according to the betting market, as you said, right, regarding the odds of Ciolacu, George Simeon stood a good chance, according to the betting market and according to the polls, that he would make it into the second round and maybe that he might beat Ciolacu, even though I would say Ciolacu is kind of a centrist position regarding many issues, and people would not have been so upset if Ciolacu won the presidency one way or another. Right now, we are faced with a completely polar choice. Ciolacu,
polar, like like behind me or polarized?
Yeah, also like maybe also like behind you, like for some people, the people who are on the losing camp might I don't know, might be summoned to do some forced agricultural labor, I don't know, or to do some dredging of the rivers in northern Russia or something, I don't know. But
Adrian,
jokes aside,
I'm very curious to find out. Can we consider the confrontation between Georgescu and Lasconi a replay of the Trump versus Kamala? Go home, Kamala, you are fired. Duel in America.
I hope so. It is to some extent like this, even though Calin Georgescu has better, let's say, institutional credentials than Trump had, but he is an outsider of politics, just like Trump is. And Kamala is an outsider towards everything, just like Lasconi is. Kamala, however, was a prosecutor, so she did at least have a legal background. She did have a background in law. Whereas this lady, Elena Lasconi, her higher education was done in this degree mill place in some private university. I don't even know if it's accredited anymore. It's well, she basically just paid for her degree essentially, and she has no higher education. We can just say that, and it's showing. I mean, of course, for a TV star, for just being on television and presenting stuff, you don't really need higher education. So it's fine that she has no higher education. But like for becoming the president of Romania and to lead a country and to understand such complex issues, to some extent it might be, yeah, because the intellectual slope between the two candidates is very much tilted towards the man in this case, the old man versus young woman. So in this case, the older man is way more intelligent than the young woman challenger, and maybe in this case, and of course, because Trump was a sovereigntist, he was the lead candidate of the sovereigntist forces, if you could call them that, in the United States, whereas Kamala Harris was the contender for the globalist camp. The same thing happens here, only with much higher stakes. So if Trump could have been seen by some as the peace candidate, it's not exactly clear if he will be the peace candidate, but Kamala for sure was the war candidate, just because she was the successor of Biden. She was from Biden's team, and obviously Kamala would have just prolonged his policy positions around the world, in fueling conflicts like the one in Ukraine. The situation in Romania is way more dangerous because this is for the war next door. This is for our involvement in the war in Ukraine. And the two candidates have opposing positions. Out of the whole political spectrum, they have the most radically opposite positions you can imagine. So Calin Georgescu is completely for peace. He's a peace candidate. He says that he wants Romania to have good relations with all the countries, including Russia. Whereas Lasconi is from the war camp, the radical war camp. Her party is also, well,
with Radu Hosu and the other cocksuckers, right?
Well, I mean, yeah, I wouldn't really want to go into that, but yeah. So basically, they are the pro-war camp in Romania, the most radical war dogs you can imagine. And yeah, if Elena Lasconi becomes president, it's kind of a certainty that Romania will actually join the war in Ukraine, like with troops, because now there's the whole discussion in Europe whether Europe should send troops. I think it would be very wise for Romania to elect a president that would be definitely against that, given that we're the most likely country to actually send the troops because of geography, because we're right next to the conflict. Then to pick a candidate like Lasconi, who said basically that it is Romania's duty to help Ukraine no matter what, and that she would do whatever to make sure Putin doesn't win, and she would help Ukraine with whatever Ukraine asks for and everything like this. So, yeah.
So you really see some very huge risk in this, let's say, possible Lasconi becoming president, that she might enter Romania in this fucking war.
Yeah, and this is why I think that Calin Georgescu will win, because of course there's this huge propaganda machine turned on right now. You have university students going out to protest against Calin Georgescu. They barely heard of him yesterday, and now they're protesting against him already. It smells a bit like Maidan, like these color revolutions that the Americans make around the world.
Protesting against democratic vote, is this democratic?
You can love democracy in so many ways. Apparently, this is one of them, right? When the wrong candidate gets elected, you go and protest and hope to topple him, because this is the American version of democracy. But yeah, my hope is that there are forces within the Romanian state that are so against the war and so against Romania's involvement in the war. I'm thinking about the army. I'm thinking about maybe the deep state, secret services stuff, that they will somehow orchestrate or help, or at least help to counter Lasconi's propaganda and to make Calin Georgescu win, because otherwise the Romanian state will enter the war. And now the war is really reaching its hot phase. Ever since last week, since Biden and also the leaders of France and the United Kingdom allowed, well, this is kind of like their way of saying it, they allowed Ukraine to use long-range missiles. What actually happens, why this is a huge red line, is that those long-range missiles cannot be shot by Ukraine. They cannot be fired by Ukraine in the same way that they were firing the previous weapons that NATO sent them. These actually need NATO technicians. This is something that's well known. Even the Germans admitted it. This is why this was the red line, because they're actually Americans, British, and French people pressing the buttons, for these weapons to launch. So now we have entered this really hot stage of the war, in which Russia said it will retaliate against NATO bases in case such attacks continue. And it is not an empty threat, because this conflict is existential for Russia. Anyway, it's a long discussion why this is not an empty threat. And it would be really bad for us to have a president that is a war hawk and that is completely for Romania's involvement, because Romania might become a target, obviously, and it is the easiest target to reach. It's the closest one from where these missiles are fired, these Russian hypersonic missiles. These hypersonic missiles cannot be intercepted because NATO does not have hypersonic technology. And there's a good chance that Romania might be dragged into this war.
So basically, will Romania face the same fate as Ukraine? What do you think?
I can only hope not. But in case this scenario goes further, develops further in the same direction, you need more fuel to keep the fire from extinguishing. And the Ukrainian fire is now going out slowly, because there are no more troops to be sent to the front line. And well, I would say if Romania has this puppet president, it will be the first country to send troops there, because why not?
But do you think that Romanians, and Romanian men especially, are so happy to fight this Ukraine war and die for Ukraine? For NATO?
I don't know. When I see some Romanian men supporting Lasconi, I actually wonder the same thing. I'm thinking the same. I'm wondering, like, do they actually want to go? Are they so eager to go to the Dnieper River and dig up trenches there? I don't know.
What about Călin Georgescu? Is he, like some say, a Putinist or a sovereignist? What's the truth?
Well, it's hard to say. It depends what you understand by these terms. Putinist or sovereignist.
In this context of the war, is it a bad or a good thing to be a Putinist right now? For, of course, thinking about the security of Romania, the geopolitical security.
Well, this term Putinist and Putin puppet and all of these things, they were used by the Western propaganda machine ever since the pandemic, maybe even before, but at least I know it's since the pandemic. Whoever doesn't want to take the vaccine is a Putin puppet and so on, and whoever is skeptical about the vaccine spreads the Russian disinformation. And ever since the war started, whoever is pro-peace and whoever wants to find a negotiated solution is a Putin puppet. So essentially, yeah, right now, if you use these terms of the Western propaganda machine, everybody's a Putinist. Everybody who wants not to enter the war, everybody who wants to save the world from nuclear destruction, everybody who just wants to find some sort of peace, as it was during the Cold War, at least, because it was a Cold War, not a hot war, just because some compromise was reached. Everybody who speaks in these terms is essentially a Putinist, according to the Western propaganda machine. So, by association, of course, Calin Georgescu is a Putinist because he wants peace in Ukraine, and no.
So if you want peace, if you want peace, if you don't want to die for others' sake, you are a Putinist or a rational man?
Well, I mean, I think you're a rational man, but if you ask the Western media, you're a Putinist. So depends who you ask, And regarding if he's a sovereigntist, yes, absolutely. I mean, this is the definition of a sovereigntist. He actually wants his whole political platform is for Romania to take its own decisions rather than just be a puppet of the West and to be a tool of the Western interests, to just mind its own interests, to use its own resources according to its own interests instead of just giving them for cheap to Western companies, to develop its own security strategy, not just be a pawn of the Americans to be sacrificed for the sake of weakening Russia or something like this. Yeah, there are many aspects in which, of course, he was a skeptic, not a skeptic. He fought against the vaccine mandates during the pandemic. He has all the credentials for being a sovereigntist in the sense that he actually fights for the interest of the people here, of the people in Romania, rather than for the global interests, the interests of the global elite, like the, let's say, mainstream candidates nowadays in Europe do.
You mentioned about this big polarity, not between the rich and the poor, like Ray Dalio says, but between these two candidates. And I would like to ask you, do you consider Calin Georgescu a man of confrontation or rather of cooperation or international cooperation?
I think he's definitely a man of international cooperation because this is what he's been doing his whole life. He was a diplomat of the United Nations, so he was not exactly in the service of the Romanian Foreign Ministry. He was in the service of various agencies in the United Nations and trying to strike deals regarding various things ever since the 1970s with Club of Rome report regarding the limits to growth and the prospect of depleting resources. This international movement came together to try to strike a balance between economic growth and the environment and to see how to sustainably manage the resources of the planet. He is, of course, by definition, a man of compromise and a man of negotiation. He is by no means, as he is portrayed, like a fascist militarist leader. This comparison is made between him and Antonescu because the physical resemblance is a bit there. Like his face looks a bit like,
but not Queen Antonescu. Let's say this.
No. Like like the Romanian fascist World War II leader who fought against the Soviet Union. But this is the entire contradiction of the propaganda. He's the peace candidate, and they compare him to Antonescu, who fought alongside Hitler and went deep into the Soviet Union and had so many millions of Romanians killed because of his decision. And of course, Romania lost the war and everything. So it's kind of it's a bit bipolar or schizophrenic even to say that he is pro-Russia while at the same time saying he's the new Antonescu. Because the old Antonescu was not exactly pro-Russia.
Who do you think the Social Democratic Party members will vote for in the second round? After that leftist party said what they said about this centrist one?
It's a difficult question. I hope that they will vote for Călin Georgescu because, of course, USR, the party of Lasconi, is basically the natural opponent, the natural enemy of the Social Democratic Party. It established itself as a party exactly it has this raison d'être to fight against PSD, to fight against the Social Democrats. This is their reason of existing. Well, nowadays it is also the reason of existing to vaccinate us all by force and to get us into the war in Ukraine, to drag us into the war in Ukraine. But before that, their only sense of existence, their only sense of legitimacy was to fight against the Social Democrats. So I hope that the Social Democrats will vote for Călin Georgescu, not just because he's the rational choice, but also because the other ones are those Taliban, those crazy people who.
So basically, it wouldn't be the first time when USR wants to fight against democracy, right? They did it again. They did it in 2017, as I may recall.
Yes, of course.
With that resist movement,
yes.
Is it correct?
USR, this
they
party,
tried to make like a Euromaidan, like in Ukraine, 2014.
Exactly. So
because there are a lot of teenagers who maybe don't know these things, you know.
Yeah, of course. I mean, USR, this party loves democracy as long as it gets them into power. If it doesn't get them into power, they stop loving democracy, and they actually organize these mass protests, which are exactly by the script of the colored revolutions, you know. So Tbilisi 2003, the Euromaidan, no, it was the Orange Revolution 2004 in Kiev, then 2014, the Revolution of Dignity, as they call it, and so on. Now what they're trying to do in Tbilisi again. This is what they did in 2017, 2018 to try to oust the elected officials from power. It was the Social Democrats and the Liberals. They had this coalition and they wanted to change the legislation regarding the criminal code and the criminal procedural code, because it was used by the Americans to enact what is called lawfare. Now, after the Romanian experience and also after some other Latin American experiences, there is a term coined for it, lawfare. So using the law and the legal system as a means for waging war on a country. And in Romania's case, basically whoever opposed the agenda of the Americans was sent to jail, be them politicians, be them, oligarchs, business people, whoever, judges, you know. So the Americans managed to set up this system in Romania to control the judiciary, and
I'm not sure if American as a whole, or maybe the Democratic side, or maybe the deep state of the American establishment.
I have no idea. I don't know how it works like underneath, if there are several factions. But I think the struggle in America is just domestic, but abroad. There is no power play between various factions abroad. It's not like when the Republicans are in power, they stop doing imperial wars or try to subvert governments or stuff like this. No, it's the foreign policy works kind of in the same way regarding irrespective of who is in power. So this thing was going on in Romania, and this is the party that is most subservient to the American embassy, and they are the main instigators for such, and the main operatives for such mass movements that topple governments.
I'm so confused, Adrian. I'm so confused because I heard this morning some people say that Calin Georgescu looks or speaks, I don't know, like a communist, and I don't understand how can you be a communist and a fascist in the same time. Can you explain?
Yeah, you can nowadays, because if you oppose the Americans, which is the liberal hegemony, then you're both. You're a fascist and a communist. You're Hitler and Stalin together, because these are no longer polar opposites. They're just polar opposites to the United States. They're polar opposites to the, let's say, liberal establishment. So, of course, once you oppose liberalism, or I don't know, I used to be a liberal and I think I still am because I haven't changed, but reality has changed. Once you oppose this, sorry?
Basically, all these principles are very volatile, like the stock market, right? So Where does this double standard come from, actually?
I think it comes from the propaganda machine of the United States, because they need enemies. In order to push their agenda, they need some sort of ideological enemy. And after the Soviet Union was beat, they had no more ideological enemies. They tried something with the war on terror to say that, oh, we are fighting terror, and if you are against us, then you support the terrorists. But that was only useful for the Middle East. In Europe, they needed something else. They needed some sort of culture war in which they're on the good side. And this is how this whole fight against extremism came about. So people who are quite liberal, like myself, came to be labeled as fascists and communists and extremists and Putin puppets and everything, just because we use our common sense and we try to oppose some things which are completely demented. Like there was the situation with the measures during the pandemic, especially the whole vaccine crusade and the exclusion from society of the people who would not take the vaccine. Nowadays, everybody who is opposed to the war and who is opposed to Romania's involvement in the war and to Romanians being sacrificed for the for the strategic interests of domination of the United States, they are also labeled as extremists and so on. And now, of course, the propaganda machine is just in overdrive, that you have 2.5 million Romanians who are extremists and who voted for this candidate and for the one from the other nationalist party, who are running on a platform of peace. So right now, to be for peace labels you an extremist.
But please help me understand. Is Calin Georgescu a mystic or conspiracy theorist, or are those who invent imaginary adversaries of Romania, like Russia? They always say about Russia, Putin. I think, how many times per day have you heard of Putin? How many times every day have you heard of Russia? Because I hear this all the time. And I fucking bored of the same, let's say, ideas in the public space.
Yeah, this is the problem. Sorry. Go on.
What do you think about this? Who is actually a mystic here?
Russia
Mr.
is the boogeyman.
Or maybe Mr. Radu Tudor, or maybe Mr. Ciuvică, or maybe Mr. Hello, Mr. Guda, U.S. foreign agent. Yes, we love.
The thing is, in Eastern Europe, Russia is the boogeyman. In Southeast Asia, China is the boogeyman. So if we were having this discussion...
So Russians are the bad guys, right?
Of course.
So if Russians are the bad guys, should we be very, let's say, warriors against these bad guys, or rather should embrace diplomacy and should rather talk about peace? What do you think?
Well, Kissinger said something very interesting. He said to be an opponent of the Americans is very dangerous, but to be an ally of the Americans, it is fatal. Why? Because, okay, let's say that the Russians are the evil trolls, the evil whatever orcs from the Siberian steppe, and they are just savages and whatever, as they are portrayed. Let's say that this is true. However, being on the side of America and neighboring Russia is not exactly the wisest strategy, because it's not like we are on the side of the Americans for Americans to protect us. America, if it has a strategic interest of weakening Russia, and it does, it has expressed it several times. The think tanks in the United States have even published these maps of how they want to break up the Russian Federation into independent states that would fight each other and so on. So America needs some sort of bulwarks, some sort of proxies through which to fight Russia, because America would not want to get into a direct conflict. And this is our role in the picture. It doesn't matter if the Russians are good or bad. Maybe they're bad. It has nothing to do with what our strategic interest is. Our strategic interest is not to be at war, and not to be at war with the greatest military power, which is Russia, which is next door. So this is our strategic interest. This is what Finland has been doing ever since the Second World War until recently when it joined NATO.
Yeah.
When
But,
you are
but I remember that Mrs. Valerica Vasilika Lasconi said that she is going to help the Moldovans to fight and win the war against Russia.
yeah,
I really remember she said this
yes,
at,
she did.
at
And
Mikutsu, at the small man, Mikutsu.
yeah. There are some things.
But his actually not very small,
Yeah.
He's pretty big. He's pretty big. He's bigger than Donald Trump.
He's bigger than both of us together, I think. But yeah.
And even bigger than Piedone.
Mm-hmm. The thing with Lasconi is she's so uneducated that, of course, now her consultants are in overdrive trying to educate
Yeah, but
her
let me
about.
just tell you that the educated men and women from this country working in some very beautiful places love Mrs. Lasconi.
Just let me make this point regarding what she said about the war. So
Yes.
the thing is, they are educating her, they're like force feeding her information, and she cannot discern between what needs to be said at the debate versus what is private information, because they're telling her, okay, this is the map, this is where we are, this is where Ukraine is, this is where Moldova is, this is where Russia is, this is the strategy. So, for example, she was asked at another interview whether Romania will enter the war. And she gave the following answer: as long as Ukraine is not losing and as long as nothing happens in Moldova, Romania will not enter the war. I think that was not a piece of information that she needed to have given out publicly. I think this is what her consultants told her, her American consultants. They told her, okay, this is what you'll have to do. Once Ukraine starts losing badly, you will enter the war. But that was just for own consumption, for private consumption. The same thing with the Moldova question. She actually blurted out something that is part of the American strategy regarding the proxy war in Eastern Europe. So they would like to activate Moldova at some point through Transnistria. Either the Moldovan government or the Ukrainian government would invade Transnistria and force a retaliatory strike from Russia, something like this. And then Romania, because of its historical ties with Moldova, would enter the war under that pretext. This is kind of the idea. So she is blurting out all of these pieces of information, which are actually true. So I think what Lasconi says there is true, but she could just not keep it in because she's been force feeding all of this information, and she cannot discern between what is actually true and needs to be kept for her own use versus what needs to be said publicly. This is my explanation.
Mm-hmm. Now, how do you think how might the outcome, let's say, of this election impact Romania's stance within the European Union or NATO?
Well, I think if Calin Georgescu gets elected, Viktor Orban will seem like a globalist puppet, by comparison. I mean, Calin Georgescu is way more sovereigntist than Orban. Orban has developed this strategy of being sovereigntist towards the Democrats in the United States and towards the European Union, but not so much towards the Republicans and not so much towards Israel. Whereas Călin Georgescu runs on a platform of complete independence towards any external force. Therefore, he would be, Romania's relation with the European Union would be heavily strained because if they sanctioned Orban, now Hungary is under sanctions from the European Union. Hungary, a European Union country. If they sanctioned Orban, you can imagine that they will sanction Romania for having elected Călin Georgescu. However, this whole sanction game is coming to an end because reality has caught on with the propaganda and with the ideology, and there's no more money. There's no more money to keep the gig going, to keep the war going, to keep this sanction regime against countries you don't like going. So, yeah, at first glance, there might be some sort of straining of relations with the rest of the European Union. However, I don't think this game will last much longer. So now there's a big tide, a big sovereigntist tide coming. Czech Republic will also turn to the other camp once Andrej Babiš is elected next year. He will join Slovakia and Hungary and this big Central European force against the war in Ukraine and against the dictates of Brussels. So Romania would also join this group once Calin Georgescu is elected. Whereas if Lasconi is elected, then she would be just the puppet of Ursula von der Leyen. She'll do whatever Ursula says and so on. And with NATO, it might get complicated because NATO has a plan to militarize Romania strongly, to develop the biggest military base of the whole alliance here in Romania. So basically, everybody knows Rammstein because of the heavy metal group, but now there's probably going to be an even bigger heavy metal group called Mihail Cogălnicianu, because this is where NATO's biggest base will be. It will dwarf Rammstein. So the plans are for Romania to develop as this military bulwark against Russia. And of course, if a sovereigntist candidate would enter the picture and would actually take the reins of power, this will probably have to be renegotiated. I don't believe that Romania can just exit NATO on its own. Anyway, you cannot even exit NATO if you want. You have to give a 1-year notice or something like this. You are not allowed to just exit as you please. So I don't think something revolutionary would happen in this direction. But I think some of NATO's plans to develop Romania as this big fat target for Russia, because this is basically the main consequence, these plans will probably have to be scrapped or to be rethought.
Yeah. Speaking about NATO and this potential war escalating here at our border, how do Georgescu and Lasconi propose to navigate the challenges posed by the Ukraine war and its effects on Romania?
Well, if Georgescu sees these challenges as challenges, Lasconi sees the other side of the coin. She sees them as opportunities. Just like in business, some see challenges, some see opportunities in the same thing. I think the war in Ukraine is kind of the same thing as a business opportunity. Some see challenges, some see threats, some see opportunities. So Lasconi comes from this political force which is strongly connected to the Ukraine war. Through fundraising, through connections with the Ukrainian deep state. I don't want to go into that subject for reasons there are huge death threats all around Romania towards many people. I will not go further into that direction. But anyway, this political force in Romania might be connected to the war profiteering, to the fact that there's all this investment in weaponry, buying weapons, BlackRock coming to buy over Ukraine, and so because they're with the Americans, they're the political force which is most strongly related to the Americans. They probably see this as something that they could profit from. Maybe they do. I have no direct information. I can just make some allegations, but I don't think that they see the Ukraine war as such a problem, because if they saw it as such a problem, they would oppose it. They see it more of an opportunity. Whereas, of course, Calin Georgescu is the exact opposite. He wants to stop all funding for Ukraine.
Because maybe, I don't know, maybe Mr. Kakamitru and Claudiu Nasui won't go actually to war. They will go abroad.
Yeah, you can imagine.
All the foreign agents will exit any confrontation when it actually gets ugly, right?
Well, I hope most sane people will exit the confrontation, will try to develop their methods to escape Romania.
Actually, how many Romanians do you expect to actually fight in this war?
I haven't thought out this problem so far, so I'm just hoping that we will not get there. I will just escape Romania at the first signs that this might happen. So I will not wait for the official announcement. I'm just looking out for signals. And if at some point I see this signal, like for example, the strongest signal you can find is the fact that the foreign embassies are issuing these calls to their citizens to leave the country. So once this happens, if the embassies in Romania start saying leave the country and don't come here unless you have very, 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 very strict business, then I might also escape. But yeah, as you mentioned, all these hot shots, all these big shots in USR, they will probably, of course, they have these bank accounts abroad. They have this, all of these connections. I'm sure they will find ways to escape the war if it comes to that.
So if in investments, let's say we don't do market timing, we don't have exit signals, here in geopolitics, we actually need these exit signals to live happily and peacefully with each other.
Precisely,
without imaginary adversaries, right?
For me, the first exit sign will be if Lasconi becomes president. Because if Lasconi becomes president, okay, a war is a bit harder to set up. So I don't expect that Romanian troops will cross into Ukraine and start fighting Russia immediately. But I think a whole security apparatus will be put in place, just like in the Latin American juntas in the 1970s, in order to basically eradicate any kind of dissent. They're already going with this propaganda that everybody who opposes them is a Putin puppet, and that there needs to be some sort of cleansing of the Romanian society against all the agents of Putin. So basically against all the sane people who don't want to die for Ukraine. So probably she will take as national security advisors and all of these positions, all of these security positions that she controls. She will probably put in some very nasty people there that are involved with the war in Ukraine and with trying to silence everybody in Romania.
Like maybe Mr. Hosu, right? The famous Șoșoacă.
I don't know, but there is a strong possibility that she will put in place all of these fanatics. These apparently we are the extremists, but they go on talk shows and podcasts with the insignia of the Azov battalion and all of these neo-Nazi legions in Ukraine. They go on Romanian mainstream podcasts, and
some
this guy that you mentioned, Radu Hosu,
last
actually
night
won the prize of civil society for 2 years ago. It's unbelievable, going around in the Nazi uniforms and receiving the prize for civil society.
The First Amendment in US is to have free speech, right? And
but we're not in the US.
Mr. Ion Raciu said that he would fight for you to have the right to have your own opinion.
Yeah,
I've seen at this fascist protest from last night from Bucharest, a woman having a message that she wants for Georgescu to have the same fate as Ceausescu in the Christmas Eve.
Really?
Yes. Haven't you seen that picture? It's incredible. She said that she wants for him to die.
Yeah, this is my worry, So these people are so deluded.
Who is more extremist? This is very important because we have two extremes right now. There is a very big polarization between these two sides. Who is the most extremist? Are the sovereignists? Or we are labeled the progressive side.
We are labeled as extremists because we are opposing this thing which they say is not extremist, and they say it's not extremist because it's somehow promoted by the Western media.
I'm actually asking, who do you think the centrist people would rather consider more or less extremist?
I hope that the centrists will consider the sovereigntists to be less extreme, because it's not something that extreme to have your own foreign policy and to develop your own resources according to your own needs and to do your economic policy according to the wishes to the needs of the people, not of the corporations and all of these things. This is not such an extreme position. Whereas the other camp, they try to label themselves as progressives, but these are empty words right now. These are just empty labels, because in the past years, we've seen what this progressivism means. These people, in my opinion and in my experience, actually, are the most dangerous people to get into power, because they have this messianic view of themselves that they are the good and fighting against evil. And yeah, it might come to political assassinations and stuff like this. I mean, they are as deluded as this girl that you mentioned had on this placard that she wants to kill
Yeah,
this guy. I know Romania
I-
doesn't have a recent history of political violence, but these people are so indoctrinated and so angry, apparently, that I don't know what might happen. This is why I think Romania is kind of turning into a dangerous place, irrespective of who wins. And
Yeah,
it
but
might
I've
be
heard the same idea coming from Usere that this Georgescu has a messianic or wants to develop a messianic image. I don't know.
Yeah, this is an instrument of projection. I mean, they are the radicals, and they're saying about us that we're the
The
radicals. They are
radical
the
left lunatics, like Donald Trump always says.
yeah, if you want, yeah. Right now, I'm not even picturing this in
It would
your.
be really, really incredible for Trump to win in America, in the free world, and here in our colony, right? For Kamala, go out, you're fired. For Kamala to win against the Trumpists, right? It would be really unbelievable.
Well, I'm not sure if it all comes down to Trumpists versus Democrats here in Romania, because even though, of
Here are
course,
more Democrats than
yeah,
I've seen some
Lasconi
chart they call
might be assimilated with the Democratic Party, but it would be good if Trump or somebody from Trump's team would actually give an endorsement for Georgescu, just to clear the picture, to say that okay, he's on our side, just like Orban tried to do with Ciolacu earlier. Like Orban invited Ciolacu over and put Trump on the phone and kind of gave an endorsement for Ciolacu from Trump, which would have helped his election into office. Now that he's not qualified into the second round, that he's
Do you think that the deep state worked against Ciolacu to favor Lasconi?
I have no idea. I really don't have an explanation for what happened on the election night. I can only speculate, but I have no idea. I have no idea if maybe, yeah. I mean, if you want Romania to enter the war, the best thing is to somehow orchestrate the election of Lasconi, and maybe in this sense, it's best to orchestrate her going into the second round with the biggest boogeyman of all. So maybe Ciolacu would not have been such a big boogeyman. It would have been, okay, the Social Democrats, they're corrupt, they're whatever. But it would have been hard for her to win on such a polarizing messages like this is the end of European Union membership for Romania if the other guy wins. This would not have been credible with Ciolacu. Whereas with Georgescu, yeah, all of these messages like, yeah, we're going back to communism, or we're going back to fascism, we're exiting the European camp, we're aligning ourselves with Russia. All of these messages stick much better to such a candidate. So if this was an orchestrated thing, maybe, I mean, we will see by the election result, the final election result. I think if it is a victory by Calin Georgescu, we can suspect that a faction of the Romanian deep state decided to go and try to escape this danger, this mortal danger for the Romanian state to be at war with Russia, and therefore took this candidate from anonymity almost into becoming the president of Romania. If Lasconi wins, then we might suspect that maybe this was a movement from the Atlanticist deep state in Romania to push the most radical pro-war and pro-America, pro-the American interest candidate into the second round and win. I don't know.
What do you think about what happened in the first round? Was it a, I don't know, black swan or a white swan?
Well, the difference between a black swan and a white swan is that the white swan is favorable towards you, right? Whereas the black swan is unfavorable. Well, I mean, I think both swans, because both of them were unexpected. The second round, the projected second round should have been between Ciolacu and Simion. And okay,
when two of them fight, the third one wins, right?
Yeah, the third and the fourth one, because none of them made it into the second round. You have a black swan Lasconi entering into the second round, and the white swan Georgescu entering into the second round. So yeah, it's quite a shock, because this is the first time in Romanian political history when both mainstream parties are out of the second round. So PNL does not, the Liberals don't have a candidate in the second round. The Social Democrats don't have a candidate in the second round. So two anti-system forces have candidates in the second round.
The leftists, they can no longer fight PSD right now. They have to leak their asses to get their vote, right?
Yeah, I don't know what their strategy would be.
USR would beg Mr. Negrescu,
definitely.
or
Now
Mrs. Gabriela Firea, who, you remember what they said about Firea?
Yeah, of course, they said some really nasty things about all the social democrats.
If I were Firea, I would fuck their asses, you know. I would fuck their asses. But I'm not Firea.
Yeah, it's a very dangerous point where we have reached with the Romanian politics, because there's no more center. So the Liberals are out, the Social Democrats are out. Only the forces contesting the establishment are in, and they are the completely polar opposites. It's as if, I know, in Germany you would have only the Greens and AfD, you know, second round between the Green Party and AfD, or like because in America, this is the thing with the American situation. In America, they only have two relevant parties, so it's always going to be one versus the other, Republicans versus Democrats. Whereas here, it's not Republicans versus Democrats. It's like the most extreme hard right faction of the Republican Party versus the most extreme hard left faction of the Democratic Party. You know. In American elections, things somehow converge towards the center, more or less. So, okay, it wasn't the case this time, but generally the rightist candidate kind of leans in to get a bit of the center before the elections, and the leftist candidate does the same towards the rightist candidate. In Romania, the center is gone, and we just have the polar opposites. And it's a complicated trend if this continues, because we will have elections. We have parliamentary elections going forward, where I hope the sovereigntist vote will be very big. But again, if there's no more center, what will we do? If half the country becomes sovereigntist and the other half becomes this Atlanticist Lasconi USR thing, how will we communicate? Because there is not even an accepted language between us. We use different concepts. They use Putinists for whatever we say. You know, Putinist, conspiracy theorists, and so on. So there's just this labeling that makes communication impossible, let alone negotiation, and so on. So yeah, it's not a good sign that the country is polarizing itself so much, I think.
I agree. We need more, let's say, centrist parties, but which understand that we actually have to promote peace and not war right now in Romania.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, but right now the center is just evaporating.
I heard Mrs. Diana Șoșoacă, who claimed that 1.8 million votes were annulled in the first round. Of those who wanted but didn't have the chance to vote for her, do you think they have the potential to decide the outcome of the second round?
Well, unfortunately, I also read this other piece of news this morning that Diana Șoșoacă is no longer endorsing Calin Georgescu. I don't know if it's true.
Did she say this? Did she say
yeah,
this?
Because initially she gave a conditioned support for him, and she said that she would support him only if he appoints her prime minister. And today she said, maybe I'm wrong. I mean, I definitely read the news. I don't know if the news is fake, but I read the news, and the news said that she no longer supports him. Of course, she also does not support Lasconi.
If this is true, then it means that Șoșoacă is really a puppet.
Yeah.
Of someone else. We don't know who that one is.
Or that she's just mentally disturbed. Or, I don't know.
Maybe she really is.
Maybe.
I have no doubt that she is insane. Do you think that there should be a psychiatrist test in these elections?
Well, no, because then, just like in the Soviet Union, psychiatry was used as a tool for silencing political opposition. It's like, you don't like the regime, there's something wrong with you, let's put you in a mental facility. They might do the same here, you know? I think it would be a very dangerous
Tool.
step, because they would disqualify everybody who has ideas outside the mainstream, you know? They would definitely have disqualified Calin Georgescu. I keep hearing that he's insane, he's a lunatic, you know, all these things, because he says things which are unconventional.
What about, let's say, the candidate strategies for addressing external economic pressures such as inflation driven by global conflicts?
Well, the Romanian president does not really have prerogatives in the economic sphere, so it will all depend on how the mechanism of forming the government works and what kind of parties reach there, because Calin Georgescu doesn't have a party. Of course, his economic ideas are quite well known. He has this distributivist philosophy of creating small farmer cooperatives to base the Romanian economy on these natural things like organic agriculture, and to have some sort of develop a commercial network to allow farmers to sell their produce instead of importing food. Regarding political parties that might support him, of course, there's the whole sovereignist movement. So there are at least 4 parties which support him that I know of, and maybe there are more, or at least 3, because Șoșoacă apparently withdrew her support. But Șoșoaca's voters will definitely vote for him, so it doesn't really matter. But it depends on who enters government. Whereas if Elena Lasconi comes into power, the whole inflation thing will skyrocket, because Romania will keep on buying American weapons to donate to Ukraine. This has been the economic strategy of Romania in the past year. Just like 2 years ago, we were buying hundreds of millions of vaccines in the whole European Union, like to vaccinate the whole population 10 times over, and then destroying them. This has been the policy of the Romanian government, to just buy vaccines and destroy them. And now, in the last year, Romania's economic strategy is to buy Patriot systems and donate them to Ukraine. So
They bought $1 billion Patriot system and donated to Ukraine. But you know, the paradox here is that they said at that time that they want to preserve life.
Of course.
They wanted to preserve life. And now they say we no longer want to preserve life.
It's as if somebody comes at your doorstep with an axe
and die
in the middle of the night. Yeah, man, it's as if somebody comes with a mask at your doorstep in the middle of the night with an axe in their hand, and you ask them, who are you, what do you want? And he says, I'm here to preserve life. You know, this is how they work. Yeah, let's donate some patriots to preserve some more life. Yeah. Woo.
But maybe there are still some rational people in USR, don't you think? Like Diana Stoica. Do you know anyone from there?
Well, Diana Stoica, I don't know her. I became acquainted with her online a bit when my father was in hospital. He needed blood, and she was involved with an NGO raising blood donations for transfusions, something like this. And that's how I became acquainted with her, and we spoke a bit regarding the situation that my father was in. I haven't seen her policy positions. I have no idea if she's any different. Other people, I know some hardliners like Năsui and Prună and all of these people from very close to the let's say the executive positions of the current USR leadership. But I don't know if there are also some rational people there. I was a member of this party. I entered this party when I was naive and stupid, like 5 years ago or something like this, and I stayed for 4 months, and then I quit because I saw what kind of lunatics, deranged people they are, extremists. They were saying things like, they were so deranged that they could not see the paradox of their own position. They were saying We should go out for democracy. We should go out, take the streets and topple the government in the name of democracy. Or we should prohibit the right of vote for poor people in the name of democracy. All sorts of things like this, because they are so upset and so messianic and so full of rage regarding most Romanian citizens. This is why also very few people vote for them, only people like themselves. And they are part of this class struggle. They like to do this class struggle against the rest of Romania. This is what I found shocking. So this is why I think they're the most dangerous political force that could take power in Romania. They were never in power. The only moment when they were in power was during the pandemic for a few months when they were making the vaccines mandatory. And the discussions that I had, because of course I had been a member and I still knew some people. And the discussions I had with those people, like for example, a lady who is quite prominent in USR. She also ran for the European elections. She was the head of their public policy. Well, it's not a think tank. It's just like the Public Policy Commission. I was trying to persuade her because they were trying to pass this bill through Parliament to make it illegal for unvaccinated people to work. So to put this green certificate, whatever rule, also in workplaces. I was trying to persuade her not to do that, and she was completely insane. Like she was telling me things like, "No, you people should be locked up." I had a private discussion with her for like 2 hours, and she was completely out of it. She was like, "We should put you in some cities with big walls, put you behind there because you're killers, you are murderers." This was her speech, and she was the leader of the Public Policy Commission. So these were the rational, sane people who were devising public policy in USR. So this is my experience with them, like complete fanatics.
By the way, I don't know if you know, did you know that some USR candidates in the Sunday's parliamentary elections are actually using drugs? And I know that for a fact. I have this information.
I don't
they
know.
Have some.
I haven't been that close. I mean, when I was in the party, I was quite a dissident. So I was contesting them from the very beginning because I had known Năsui, this libertarian freak, from many years ago, and I knew how dangerous he is. That he wants to privatize everything, and of course his family is this oligarchy that has connections with the previous Securitate, and they made their fortune selling equipment to the secret services.
They want to privatize everything, but he is engaged with Securitate.
Well, the Securitate after 1990 became capitalist, right? His father defected. His father was on a mission to the United States.
They all hate Ceausescu, but profited from the Ceausescu regime.
Of course. His father defected in 1987 when he was on a business trip by the Romanian state. So he was sent by the Romanian state to do some business. He was involved with some electronic equipment, I don't know, and to obtain some licenses from the United States, and he defected. And in 1990, his father started selling Motorola equipment to the army. In 1990, like Năsui's father, this is how Năsui made his fortune. He's a millionaire, and he sponsored the party, and the party adopted him as like the main policy guru, because his father built this fortune by being a Securitate defector and made his fortune selling electronic equipment to the Romanian army in 1990, when there was still the provisional government. There was Victor Atanasie Stănculescu. He was involved in this file. Like he was actually convicted to jail, Victor Atanasie Stănculescu, and the vendor, who was Năsui's father, did not do jail time because the dossier had reached its term of limitations. Like the trial took too long, and then his family got scot clean. But yeah, this is the guy. These are the people. They have strong connections with the secret services. The Năsui oligarchic clan still sells electronic equipment to CTS, to all of these secret services, and of course they want to privatize everything because they have the money to buy it. So why not? It's a good philosophy.
Unbelievable, really unbelievable. Adrian, what sovereignist party do you think will make the surprise in the parliamentary election next Sunday?
I hope it's gonna be PPR, so the Patriots of the Romanian People.
I don't think many of our listeners know who PPR is. Maybe you can say a few words about them.
Well, I don't know them personally. I know some people. The thing is, during the pandemic, there were some people on Facebook questioning the official narrative and then organizing protests and fighting for our right to a normal life. And I've seen that in the past month, many of the people I already knew from the pandemic times, and who are also dissidents regarding the war message with Ukraine and everything, they joined this party, and they are now on the lists. They are now on the parliamentary lists for the elections on Sunday. So I hope they'll make a good showing, and I hope they'll enter parliament, because it's people I know online. Okay, I don't know them in person, but I know them online, and I think they have integrity, and they're on the right side of the fight.
Can you at least mention a few names of these?
Well, I mean, the most famous is probably Dinu Popescu. He makes some shows on television, on Realitatea TV. Maybe you've seen them, like Culisele Statului Paralel with Anca Alexandrescu. I only know him through Facebook. I haven't met him personally, but I think he has the biggest profile, and he runs in Olt County in southern Romania. There's Adina Vitan Balint in Dolj, Cosmin Dragoste also in Dolj County. In Giurgiu, you have Alice Popa, who is a Romanian teacher at George Coșbuc High School, and who was very much against the pandemic policies and also the war discourse. Of course, there's the Dr. Răzvan Constantinescu from Iași, who is the executive president, I think, of this party, and he was against all the pandemic policies also instituted in his university, and he was sanctioned for it. He did not want to force his students to get vaccinated like the rest of the professors did, and he would allow unvaccinated students to exams, which was against university policy and all these things. So yeah, I think there are people with integrity. This is what I know about them.
Great. I'm looking forward to see the results, and
me too,
especially the expression of some people's faces after that. And
yeah,
my last question for today, for this debate, is: what is your prediction? Who do you think will win and become the next president of Romania on the 8th of December?
I am by nature an optimist. I can only give you the answer, Calin Georgescu. If this doesn't happen, I think we are all screwed. So I can only hope that reason will prevail and we will have Călin Georgescu as the next Romanian president.
Great. Thank you very much, Adrian, for being with me today and participating.
Thank you very much for having me.
Debate discussing the unfolding events in Romania right now. Thank you all, the young generation, for watching us and reaching the truth and not propaganda you see everywhere. And also, my last message for you is to vote and embrace the red wave, and also may the peace prevail. Thank you very much and have a nice day.
I agree. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye. All the
best.